Well, good afternoon. Yeah, just to reiterate the point, I mean, just covering tech at Mashable, I know the STEM issue is really a big deal in the United States. There's not enough graduating college seniors who have STEM skills, and a lot of people like me opt to take liberal arts instead because it's easier. So, but I wanted to talk to you today about this is a very kind of interesting project from the Air Force, and I want to talk about how this would kind of woo those STEM students, and sort of the collaborative process that you went about in creating this. So, first of all, you want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Ryan Carroll, Group Creative Director at GSD&M.
I'm Scott Brewer, Group Creative Director at GSD&M.
Colonel Marcus Johnson, Director of Marketing at Air Force Recruiting Service.
Trace Dominguez, producer for an online show called D News.
Okay. Who would like to, first of all, give a quick synopsis of this program?
You want me to kick it off?
Okay.
Well, Air Force has been one of our clients for many years. We do pretty traditional recruiting advertising as well as digital platforms for them year in and year out. They don't have a problem with recruiting. They get a lot of applicants. They just need the best of the best. And what we started to realize is that, I think you said earlier at lunch, 16 to 17% of Air Force employees are actually pilots. Everyone else does things in tech and need to be adequately educated around STEM subjects. And so what Air Force wants is just the bar of all STEM propensed kids to rise, just like Google does, just like Apple does. And so that was kind of our objective here, was to change perception that the Air Force isn't just about pilots and airplanes, but it's about scientists and engineers and tech junkies just like all of us. And also to try and just like raise the applicants' propensity through this project. So you want to take it through like a little bit more of the platform, and you just talk a little bit about the actual execution.
Yeah, so I think our approach was to, as Scott mentioned, I think a lot of people would just perceive the Air Force as just being pilots, but when you really dig deeper, there's an entire space command attached with the Air Force. They're in charge of satellites, the entire GPS network. There's an entire humanitarian effort with, that we did for a project where basically they're kind of the first boots on the ground with major natural disasters like Haiti or the tornadoes in Oklahoma. And so to kind of bring those projects to life and give kids an opportunity to kind of see what the science applications are in those, and give them a chance to kind of dive in and work on the same problems that these Air Force scientists and engineers work on every day.
Mm-hmm. So again, recruiting isn't the issue, it's more a question of trying to draw this particular type of recruit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you look at Google does the Google Science Fair, mm-hmm. They do that for the entire country, not just to get Google applicants. They do it because they need to encourage more and more kids to get involved in STEM. And we kind of look at this as the same way. The benefit is people learn more about the Air Force and they might find an opportunity or a career further on down the line. But really the goal is to just increase the overall level of STEM education across the country.
Right. And is this something new for the Air Force, or is this
You want to talk about that?
It's really not new for the Air Force. I mean, we, from a branding standpoint, we are very, very involved in STEM. A lot of the missions, even the flying missions, have a lot of STEM support, and we're looking for those kids that are interested in STEM and interested in collaborating, interested in coming into the Air Force and advancing their knowledge with the latest cutting-edge technology. So we have been doing this for quite some time now.
We actually have a case study video if you want to just watch it. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the actual platform, but it's still live. If anybody's on a laptop, you can go to Air Force Collaboratory. We have a video that we can run through that's just 2 minutes.
This is the Arachnipede. It's a 3D printed microbot that will be deployed after natural disasters to locate survivors. It wasn't developed by scientists or engineers. It was developed by thousands of students across the United States. This is a $150 million GPS satellite. This spring, it was launched into a precise slot in space, calculated not by NASA, but by dozens of classrooms just like this one. This is the Air Force Collaboratory, and this is where it all happened.
A new report out this morning finds American high school students are falling further behind their peers in other countries.
This statistic doesn't just affect companies like Apple and Google. A lack of scientists and engineers affects the future of our country.
I called for an all-hands-on-deck approach to science, math, technology, and engineering.
The Air Force's challenge was to inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers. not just for the government, but for the entire country. The Air Force Collaboratory is the first collaboration microsite where students and Air Force experts work together to solve the Air Force's most challenging problems.
What we'd like to do is use technology to reduce the time it takes to find survivors and increase life saved.
We launched with 3 unclassified projects. The more students researched, contributed ideas, and collaborated with others, the more they were rewarded. The Collaboratory wasn't just the next crowdsourcing effort. We built the classroom of the future, marrying the digital with the physical to solve real-life problems. And in partnership with the Discovery Channel, we created specific curriculum for teachers to use in their classrooms. The Collaboratory generated millions of impressions and unique visits. It also received press from major publications and all the things you'd see in other cyber case studies. But more importantly, it worked. The average time spent on the Collaboratory from engaged students was 47 minutes per visit. Go Science.
So I wanted to talk a little bit first about the genesis of this, the time frame. When did this come about? What was the original kind of discussion about this?
It's been a long time. When was that briefed? That was at least a year ago.
2012?
12, end of 2012? Yeah. It was a typical briefing. It could have been a TV campaign, could have been a print campaign, could have been any kind of solution that came about. Again, with those same objectives. And obviously collaboratories, the word collaboratory wasn't invented by us. There's definitely many out there. You can Google and start to see that they're mostly forum-based message boards. But we decided we'd bring one to the foreground, develop it with our partners. We used a company called We Like Small to develop our platform.
I'll just stop you there. Like,
Yeah.
Were there other concepts you were kicking around? You talking about TV campaign? Were there like, were you thinking of a game or?
Yes, absolutely. We knew we wanted to do something non-traditional. We talked about gamification. Was one of the ideas that were on the table. I remember there was Brain Force. There was an idea around geocaching, kind of a game. There was a lot of gamification talked about because, again, in education, there's kind of this incentive-based kind of thing going on right now where the more reward, the more quickly people seem to learn. So there were some concepts on the table like that. But we honestly brought this, it was very risky. We lost a little bit of control over an open-based forum like this. And so to Colonel Johnson's credit, I think there was a meeting that we had with you where you said, if we're going to do this, I don't want this to be a Hollywood version of these projects. I want them to be the real projects. I want to take 3 projects that we're actually working on at the research bases around the country, and I want to put them on this platform. And we're really going to launch a satellite based off the coordinates that everyone comes up with on this project. And we're really going to develop this solution in search and rescue. And so it took some guts, on their part. And I think it's a valuable lesson from a client standpoint that sometimes you just have to take risks to come up with something.
And they talked a little bit in that video about how you got the word out to teachers and stuff, but could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, we at D News, we do an online show. So we were approached by GSD&M and also the Air Force, and they said, hey, we want to do a series of videos that we can put out through you guys. And it was not just us. There was also ads around on the net and whatnot in more traditional senses. But they didn't really tell us what to say so much as they said, here's what we're doing. And can you kind of capture that and make it your own? So it's what we call a native integration. So we had, and a first episode we did was about like collaboration throughout history. Einstein actually went on walks with other mathematicians and they would bounce ideas back and forth. So we talked a little bit about that and said, this is not a new concept, but we're doing it in a different way. And so we pitched it out to our audience as like, this is something the Air Force is trying out. And at first, some of the commenters, had confusion as to what it was, not because it wasn't being explained well, but because they weren't used to seeing it, I think. But as soon as they started to see it, then you even got people on YouTube talking about having been to the site and coming back and watching our second video, which was specifically about search and rescue, and then our third video, which was specifically about the quadrotor system.
So how did you involve teachers in this?
There was also a collaboration with Discovery Education, which is an arm of Discovery that is in about 80% of schools around the nation, and they have curriculums that they can put out with Discovery Education to these classrooms that could point them back to the Collaboratory and show them how they could work with the Air Force to, as they said in the tagline, solve real-world problems, which is kind of the exciting thing, because you can spend a lot of time on the internet and never do anything real.
Yeah.
So it's cool to spend time and actually get something back outside of the screen.
Yeah. It was interesting developing the platform because we had our idea of what kids would want to use, what tools they'd want to use. I mean, obviously people have things like GoToMeeting and stuff now to actually collaborate virtually. And when we got to, we did some tests in, we work in Austin, Texas, and so we went to some high schools and we showed them the idea and we took them through early prototypes of the platform, and they honestly used forums still. They used message boards. They're used to that back and forth. They're used to the record of the conversation, and so we built that into this specifically based on their feedback. It was actually really interesting to see that kids still want that kind of rudimentary thing that we've been using for 15 years on how to actually collaborate. And then obviously the front end looked visually a lot different, and there was a lot more video content and stuff like that than probably what they're used to. But when it came down to it, the way that they wanted to interact and the way that they actually did interact with the airmen that were on the other side, working with them, was through a forum message board based system.
And what's the motivation for kids to get involved in this project? Is it just kind of bragging rights, or?
I think some is bragging rights. I think Trace kind of hit on it, that if you're kind of interested in science and technology, the chance to work on really big projects, I don't know anything anywhere else where you can actually launch a satellite, or you can actually develop microbots like we did. So transparency was super important to us kind of throughout this entire process, and we made it clear that these are real projects that the Air Force is trying to solve. We want your help, and I think in kind of, in the spirit of collaboration and just being altruistic, kids want to kind of help out, and the fact that a 16-year-old can help develop a microbot that could eventually save lives, or develop code to help a quadrotor fly, those opportunities don't exist. So if you give them the opportunity, we felt that they would jump at it, and they did.
Did they get that sort of pride of ownership, though? I mean, were they, singled out for having this particular idea within and so forth?
They were. We built an entire kind of reward system within the Collaboratory. Certain badges were given out only once to one student if you had a particular interesting idea from the airmen. So if you saw a little badge next to an individual user, that guy knew, or that girl knew that they kind of came up with something pretty interesting.
Now, was there a sense that this is more than something fun for bright kids to do, that this might actually lead them to a different career path?
It's a good question.
I would hope so. Being in the Air Force. So while it seems like, we're going to have, I work at Air Force Recruiting Service, so I want all these smart kids to come work for the Air Force and help shape our future. But it really was a great opportunity for us to be a backdrop to this collaborative effort. And so we do, like I said, we do a lot of STEM things in the Air Force. We want the kids to come see what the Air Force really, what we have our hands in. And to be quite honest, when we reached out to the units who were supporting this, the units were very excited because the squadron commander of the GPS squadron is a very good friend of mine. And when I pitched this as, hey, let's let GPS be the backdrop for this, he was like, all right, cool. Because, I don't know if you guys know it or not, but we have 24 GPS satellites in a constellation. He was hoping, well, maybe through collaboration, some of these kids might come up with something that could reduce that footprint and make it a little bit more efficient to fly it, or are we flying the GPS constellation the way it's intended to be flown, or is there some revolutionary idea out there that this platform could deliver? And so the units were very excited about it. And so we were hoping to get, these kind of revolutionary concepts put in place in the Air Force. So it was really a benefit to us. Those kids get educated to what the Air Force is doing, and we get an introduction to the kids.
Right. Nothing else that exposes them to something which they might not otherwise be exposed to. You talked about one of the projects. There were a total of 3 there. Can you talk about the others as well?
Yeah, so just a quick overview of the 3 projects. The first one was called Search and Rescue 2.0, and that focused on PJs, parajumpers, who basically these are guys that, when an earthquake levels Haiti, they're usually the first boots on the ground. They literally fly over, jump out of planes, carry all their equipment with them, and immediately go to work going through collapsed structures trying to find life. And so they are constantly looking for innovations to help them find life. The biggest, they call it the golden hour, and it's from basically when their feet hits the ground to that 60 minutes. If they can get to someone, the chances of saving their life, or locate them, the chances of saving their life is greatly increased. So we came up with ideas, or kind of gave it to the students to come up with ideas to how can they, using technology, find people, buried under buildings, buried under houses. And they came up with amazing ideas. And that was one thing that I think we were surprised at. As we were building the system, especially Scott and I were not smart science people. We're in advertising. So it was this constant balance of, are we assuming that they can do too much? Are we assuming that they know these certain technologies? And within the first day, we realized that they'd overshot what our expectations were. And the level of thinking that they brought to each project and each idea we were blown away. And eventually the solution to that was a microbot called the Arachnipede. And I think the way this worked is this wasn't just someone's idea of this is how to do it. It was basically kids started honing in on microbots, and then based on that, we started throwing challenges out to them. If it's going to be a microbot, it needs to be easily transportable. These things are going to get lost and broken, so it can't be terribly difficult to produce. And so we started getting into 3D printing. We started getting into batteries and kind of power sources, and eventually led to the Arachnipede, which should be this little thing.
So was this this became a reality, or?
This is currently being explored as far as, we started with the schematic, and then there's a whole AFRL, the research laboratory will take that and then start playing with prototypes.
I'm just curious, how does that work? How is it powered, and how does it seek out people who might be injured?
Sensors, it's a 3D printed microbot, and this is, you're going to realize how non-sciencey.
The good thing about the Collaboratory is it didn't get deleted. You can get on there and you can see all the information that went into that
just for a
video.
layman,
It's a true collaboration of minds.
It's actually, it's built with sensors. It's a 3D printed bot that small batteries, almost like if you've seen hex bugs, like that kind of power source. And actually the behaviors of it was basically kind of studied by studying insects, by studying ants, and how they work together. So that's about as much as the science part of it behind that I understand. But yeah.
Okay, and there was one more as well, right?
There's two others.
Two others, yeah.
Two others,
So the second one was Mind of a Quadrotor, and this was a much more focused effort. But quadrotors and drones are things that are become very popular with teenagers. Basically, parts you can build at Radio Shack. And those very same quadrotors are things that the Air Force explores for search and rescue. The example they threw out to us was in the Tokyo disaster, when humans couldn't go anywhere near the reactor, they used drones to kind of fly in and try to find out the sources of radiation. So experiments like that. And so they threw out challenges to kids to find out the right types of sensors and essentially program a quadrotor to think on its own. So in areas that, in a room it's never been in or an area it's never been in, can this thing think and act without any human interaction?
Oh, cool.
And the final one was the launch of GPS-2F, which is the launch of a real GPS satellite. We actually have a video about that too, so I'll let you watch that.
Nearly every facet of our lives is enhanced by the Global Positioning System, GPS.
So as the commander of the 2nd Space Operations Squadron, my job is to operate the Global Positioning System to provide precise navigation and timing to the entire world.
This complex network consists of a constellation of 31 operational satellites. But one of these satellites must be replaced. If you join this project, you will work with Air Force Space Command to determine the precise placement of this satellite in one of 6 orbital planes.
We'll take your recommendation to the commander of 14th Air Force for approval, at which point we'll load it into the launch vehicle at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Florida, and directly inject the GPS satellite into its precise point in space.
If you calculate the wrong location, the entire network is compromised. This isn't a hypothetical situation. This isn't a simulation. This is a $150 million satellite. No pressure.
No pressure, I like that.
That was your line, right?
Oh yeah. Everybody's always tense on launch day.
So that was something that, as a newcomer to Air Force, as a client, I honestly didn't even know that they controlled the satellites that power our GPS on our phones, and I think that was a huge perception-changing thing for me. And that even though there was a constellation that had satellites that went out of orbit or needed to be replaced, and I think you described it as a pretty political discussion around where that next satellite's going to go into orbit. There's a lot of different entities who are benefited by that orbit, whether they be commercial or military, or what part of the world it affects the most. I mean, a new satellite right over New York can greatly improve the reception, but it compromises somewhere else. So it's a nice forum for discussion, and we invited the kids into that and just kind of like see how that works and just expose them to the whole process.
Mm-hmm. So we launched it over Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Phones are working really good.
Yeah, 4 bars.
So I would think as a client, the Air Force is very atypical. Usually the idea is to kind of sell product or something along those lines.
Right.
So with this campaign, like what were the benchmarks you're looking for? I know you mentioned impressions was one.
Yeah, we knew this was not going to be a huge lead generator, from a recruiting standpoint. We really just wanted to, again, take this opportunity to educate. I mean, I've been out to a lot of these like tech shows and seen the kids, and a lot of the comments back to me personally is, I didn't know the Air Force did that. And so it's almost like we're one of the best kept secrets out there, seems like. But so we wanted to show, hey, this is a platform. We have 3 research labs around the Air Force. We have multiple test wings. We do a lot of research and to help the operators or the war fighters out there. We don't want to put a product out there that's that hasn't been fully vetted. But from the kids' perspective, just introduce them into the world of test and to research, and it was really the payback was really good for us, and we saw a little bit of that on we have a website, airforce.com. We saw a little bit of that. They would come to our page and look and research.
So
from an advertising standpoint, we're here at One Show and Creative Week and everything. It was very much a brand metrics campaign. It wasn't meant to generate leads at all, if any. And so it was about brand metrics and impressions and change perception and all those types of things. So
and the perception wasn't a negative one; it was sort of more of a blank slate, right?
I think so. I think it's the perception that they're just all pilots. So kind of showing them the whole palette of what the Air Force has to offer was important. I think also for us, the final ideas, or if we built a system that allowed true collaboration to lead to strong final results, was a huge metric for us. And the fact that they did the arachnopede, that they wrote code and found sensors for the quadrotor, and then in May, this month, they'll launch the satellite into the coordinates that the kids calculated. So to us, it was we picked the right projects, and the average time on the site was 47 minutes. So they seemed to engage with it quite often.
Yeah, that seems like an astounding amount of time. I mean, is there anything I guess games would be comparable.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. I mean, having gone to the site a lot and seeing a lot of the kids that obviously became just huge adapters to the site and spent a lot of time on it. I mean, you just saw their names all the time on there. They were constantly commenting. This guy Warren gave like the genius patch to or whatever. I mean, they lived and breathed it for that period of time. They got really engaged, and from a marketing standpoint, it's off the charts from an engagement perspective. So, but then you think about it from the other aspect, and it was really educational, and so is 47 minutes even, equal to a classroom, during the course of a day. So there's a lot of ways to measure it. Because of what it turned into, we kind of stopped talking about it in advertising terms and just thought about the benefits of it and the STEM initiative and all that. So that's kind of what I'm more proud of based on.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, and I was wondering if anyone in the audience has any questions for the panelists here. And I was told there's a microphone. There will be a microphone. Oh, there they are. Anyone? Question? You can come up. If not, one thing I want to ask you is where do you go from here? Are you going to continue with this with other projects? And how do you come up with the projects?
We have talked about potentially doing it in the future, keeping it alive. And I mean, I know we did 3 projects, and it was kind of a sprint. So we were trying to maybe go out to the research labs again and ask them, are there any problems that they're working on that they would like to put back in the Collaboratory since this was such a great success for us? And so, again, it could be, wow, it's a wide open range from composites to how we are going to develop the next, futuristic fighter jet, or are we doing missile warning correctly? Are we doing launch correctly? SpaceX is out there. What's SpaceX doing that we're not doing? Why can they do it cheaper? We're always looking to be more efficient in the Air Force. So I know that there are problems and situations out there. It's just a matter of reaching out to the external organizations and saying, let's maybe do it. Maybe let's not run a marathon. Let's run a half marathon this time, And
we focused a lot on the collaboration side of it, between the two-way dialogue going on. We purposefully tried to avoid the word crowdsourcing in this particular campaign for launch. But
why is that?
Well, from a marketing standpoint, it's just been done, and Navy's been doing that, and it's crowdsourcing's, it doesn't educate, in my opinion. It's you can go watch a video and you can give an answer and you can just harvest ideas, but there's a two-way side of the Air Force collaboration that truly educated, in my opinion, and brought like the classroom into the virtual space, and I think that's what this has at least started to do, and then we'll look back on it 10 years and say, that was obviously ridiculous, compared to where we go with virtual education. But there was something really nice about that two-way aspect to it. That said, if they have some sort of problem that a lot of people could solve quickly, like find a plane in the middle of the Indian Ocean, for instance, if they could put that up there onto this platform and have it be a center for idea generation, that's also a long-term benefit of the site. So I'd love to see it keep going. Please don't delete it.
Jump into the original discussion. I'm just curious why you think STEM it still has this problem of getting kids interested when tech is so ubiquitous, especially among young people. You think a lot of them would want to be building this stuff. What's the disconnect there?
Math is hard. I mean, it's really, I think a lot of people were marketing math wrong to students. We've done a few episodes of our show even where we're like, it's not as hard as you think. It just depends on how you look at it. So how we teach math is not quite the same as in some countries, but that's part of it, is there's kind of like this dark cloud over math. But science is very popular. Like, there are science shows and movies and coming out all the time. So I'm hoping that STEM through science, I think, which is easy to get people passionate about with shows like Cosmos, projects like these, is you can see that the market's there and there are people that are clamoring to be able to get out there and try their hand at these things. But there are barriers through kind of ourselves more than the STEM projects themselves.
Yeah, I know when I was in school, I was like, why do I have to learn math? How's it going to apply to my life? But it seems like now there is ample evidence that it could, at least, right? Yeah. Again, anyone in the audience have any questions?
Following up on that, I wondered, do you have any statistics about the ratio?
Sorry.
Just curious about the statistics of the ratio of girls versus boys who participated on the site, and if you could talk about that a little bit.
It did skew heavy male. We tried to keep the projects open, to both genders, but it happened to skew heavy male, which is kind of where just overall STEM education lands.
It's a good question.
So this platform, it actually it's teaching kids what the Air Force does, but it's also educating kids into what careers STEM can offer. Is there any efforts being made currently or probably in the future to not only take these kids right now as they're in high school, but to see them throughout their careers, so you don't lose them to like the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, and they actually come and join the Air Force.
Do we have?
Are you thinking about like ways of like keeping tabs on these kids? So
Oh,
that
the
they
actual
stay
kids that
interested-
participated?
Yeah, so that they stay interested in the Air Force and not want to go to the flashier companies of the world.
I would say that really wasn't our original intent. I mean, while I would love to do that. I mean, these kids are brilliant. I mean, to be quite honest, I would love to do that. But I think it's more of a, they are aware of who we are. Our system is set up to enable them to reach out to us and engage us. And our process is set to where we're not, they have to show interest and they have to say, I want more information. And then from that point on, we can engage them and stay as much engaged as they want to. So that's just kind of how we do business in the Air Force.
You mentioned the male, female. What was the average age?
I'm not sure. I mean,
Nora in the audience here probably has all the statistics.
Yeah.
She's
I can tell you our average age for our show is between 14, 15, and about mid-20s, and it skews more male than female, although we just had a new host join us, so now we're 2/3 female for our show, for our science show, which I was really excited about. I'm the only guy now, which is fine with me, because we need more ladies to take up STEM.
Our effort was primarily focused on high school kids, so I imagine just 14 through 17, 18 was the core.
Yeah.
When you kind of look at the actual user pages and stuff, age isn't one of the things that is displayed. It's basically just first name and last initial, and that's kind of the only information we require for you to kind of run in and start playing.
Anyone else? Any questions?
I was just wondering, I know you mentioned that it's good for clients to take risks. Do you think the Air Force is more likely to take risks with younger people being involved because they do mostly get most of their involvement from younger high school to college age people?
So would they take more risks with a younger audience as they're...
Well, I mean, it's a risk bringing in so many unexperienced people to work on these projects. Do you think they're more likely to do that because they tend to have people in that age group anyway who are working for them?
I don't know if they're that much different than, are they different than the other service organizations, Air Force or?
I think we are a little bit different because we do give our younger airmen and our younger officers a lot more responsibility. That's been my impression over my career in the Air Force that the other services do. I mean, I get that feedback from like my counterparts that are in the Navy or the Army. They're like, you allow your airman to do that? Wow, by himself or by herself? Yeah, we do. Because we are a smaller force than obviously the Army. We're bigger than Marines, and we're pretty comparable to the Navy. But we do expect our airmen to be responsible and continue their education while they're in the Air Force at a young age. So, I mean, this pretty much just whets their appetite, this kind of stuff, and then they come in, they realize that there's opportunities to advance their degrees and just get smarter about what they're passionate about.
When you think about like who we're talking to and what we're competing against, video games, anything obviously on the internet, you guys do definitely push the boundaries of how to reach these kids. Right. Beyond a large TV campaign, it might not hit a bunch of 16-year-olds, but again, taking the risk of letting them launch a satellite might do that.
Right.
And there was a lot of engagement on our end, right at the front line of people who, if you've been on YouTube, don't watch the show, but they like to comment. And the first comments that came in were like, ugh, like the military, they're doing this or that. But then after people watched the video and they started to comment again, it was like, oh, I didn't know the Air Force did search and rescue stuff. And as we were said already, like it kind of expanded the Air Force brand outside of just like military operations. It does all of these other things that are military operations in a different way.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, does the Air Force do a lot of traditional advertising, still TV or print or anything out there? Do you do any kind of TV campaigns?
We do. We have a limited TV campaign that's out there. It's always tied to money with us, and everyone is aware of the environment out there. Some services focus a little bit more, the Marines, on TV, but they're looking for a different profile of a Marine.
And we at GSD&M have handled the account. We handled the TV as well as digital, and it was definitely a media consideration years ago to shift towards digital and mobile.
Yeah. That's what the kids are.
For especially the Air Force's target. They're online way more than they're watching TV, and it's a little bit less traditional of a media buy than somebody like the Marines might do. So it gives us the opportunity to do things like this and develop things a little bit more in the digital space.
Any other questions out there? All right, I think unless you guys have anything to add, we could probably. Thanks everyone for coming down, and if you're too shy to ask a question, these guys will be here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.